My name's Rex Roberts. I'm with the VJ Academy, and today we're going to be covering effects in Resolume. So we already did a touch and go earlier in the beginner course on effects, but I wanted to circle back and do a deep dive here, seeing as effects are one of our more powerful tool sets we have as VJs. So we'll touch on the basics and work our way up to some more advanced concepts. I'll touch on 3 ways that we can drive parameters to make our visuals cohesive with the music. And at the end, I'll even showcase how I like to run effects in my own composition for a live performance, as well as a new plugin that just dropped that has 20 shaders inside one plugin. So let's get into it. All right, now that we're here in Resolume, let's go ahead and look over here at the Effects tab. And this is anything you've installed, download online, purchased, etc. It's all going to be here. And as you can see, you stack up a lot over time. That really gives you a lot of different tools to dial in that aesthetic you're looking for. And later on in the tutorial, we'll go over a few different spots that you can source effects like these. Now, there's a couple ways to search and apply effects, so I'll touch on those. Now, I usually type over here in the Effects tab. That way I can do a little bit of window shopping, because you can double click on effects and it will show you the preview monitor, what the effect is looking like in the preview monitor. And then you can even go and just check out multiple effects quickly and see which one you're looking for. And then of course you can go down here and dial it in even on the preview side, just to toy around with it a little bit. So as you can see, tweaking a few parameters changes the look dramatically. Where you drop your effect has a big impact. It's a creative decision, just as big as which effect you pick. We've touched on Resolume's hierarchy earlier in this course, but I want to show you a couple examples of how the same effect reacts at each level. So you can grab the invert RGB and throw it on a clip, for example. You can also do a layer, group, and composition. So here you see it on the clip. Let's fire off the logo so we have another example and some differentiation here. So I'll go back to the clip panel of our visual. We got our effect here. I'm going to grab it and drop it on my logo layer. Now you'll see that it took the effect off the clip and put it on the logo layer. That made my logo go from white to black, which is another good tip for those of you who have just a white or a black logo and want the opposite of that. Now we can see it over here in the logo layer. We got our effect. So of course, if we wanted to affect the whole composition, we could grab it, drop it on the comp. You'll notice that the clip and the logo are now inverted, as well as anything else that would be playing right now. If you want to go deeper in the hierarchy that Resolume has to offer, we do have a groups tutorial we did earlier in the beginner course, as well as a layers tutorial, and then we also do the Resolume install and UI overview. Another way to easily apply effects is by double-clicking the name on the clip selection. Then you can go to video effects, and you got your full arsenal here, as well as a search parameter up here. All right, let's jump into the effect parameters. Every effect that you apply comes with a opacity slider, and that is indicating how much is being applied and visible on your content. So with sliders and drop downs and toggles, every effect has its own unique setup. And you can count on each effect also having a blend mode option. And Rob went deep earlier in the beginner course on blend modes, and they're definitely worth playing around with. And between parameters, blend modes, and how you stack effects, you can really get some unique looks, and it feels like there's infinite combinations out there. And really the fastest way to learn what an effect is bringing to the table is grabbing some of the parameters and just moving them around. Especially if you got music going, kind of jump it with the beat for a bit and see if it's landing aesthetically. And if it is, then this is a good indicator that you want to drive this with something other than your hand. So if you'll notice, each one of these parameters has a cogwheel over here, and this opens up your options to drive that parameter. So the ones that we'll be focusing on here that we use most often are timeline, BPM, as well as external FFT, which is your audio. So with timeline, we covered that thoroughly in Resolume Basics, but just for a brief overview, it goes from 0 to 1 for a seamless loop. And then you can pause it, reverse, all that good stuff. And then you also have options to have it bounce. You can do random. So there's a few different ways to drive this. Okay, in this next example, what I'd like to do is bring in a shaper from the Sources tab. Let's drop that in and engage it, and I'm going to remove any visuals behind it. So let's make a couple of adjustments first. Let's move this to a rectangle, take the size down. And let's remove the outline. My goal here is to have some examples of this and how it can move back and forth in different ways using the envelope. So let's add a timeline on, and we'll see it's just got the default loop. I'm going to have that bounce. We'll pause it for now. That way I can line it up just right. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. I got a negative 0.38 to a 0.38. All right, now it's bouncing back and forth. So let's add an envelope on here. And as you can see, these are relevant to each other. They move at the same speed back and forth, and they are tied to each other. So what we could do is set up a unique way that this gets animated through the envelope. And you can do that by going over here to your curves is one point. There's a bunch of different ways that you can set this up. So go through here, check these out, and see which one is fitting for your scenario. Getting familiar with these is helpful, especially if you're trying to do some 2D animation or just get a specific look dialed in. Now, one of my favorites is the quadratic in and out. And if you're familiar with After Effects at all, you'll know this as the easy ease. So if you hit this little P, it will open up your presets that you have. So one of those, again, go in here, mess around with them. And if you want to add in different points and adjust it yourself, just double click, it'll add a point. If you want to remove some, you can do that. And then if you still want to add in different curves from this point, you can do that as well. So if you end up getting something that you like and you want to lock it in, you can hit that P and go to manage your presets, delete or add anything. And again, if you just wanted to save something, you can do that as well. So that's the basics of envelopes. And if you guys wanted to go deeper, I do have almost a 20-minute video in the VJ Academy classroom. I felt like this is a great example to visually showcase how envelopes can help animate things across the screen for you. But it's important to keep in mind that you can definitely use this with effects. So let's go ahead and throw this on a visual. So as usual, we'll go down here, grab some parameters, move them around, and see what we can get. So let's take that X factor. We'll put a timeline on it with an envelope. We'll make it bounce back and forth. And let's throw a preset on it. Let's test out the easy ease. That's going to make it ease into the 0 and the 1. So on both polar ends, it's going to ease into it rather than just sliding in and going straight back. And what I would like to do from this point is add in some external FFT to utilize our audio reactivity. But before we do that, let's make sure we're up to speed on our audio and dive into the settings real quick. Go up here to Arena, Preferences, and Audio Input Device. Hit that drop down and choose whatever you got going on. So maybe that's a microphone you got hooked up, your laptop's built-in input, or an audio interface like the Focusrite Scarlett. And this is what a lot of VJs use to perform live. It takes a line straight from your sound source, usually right there in the front of the house, for a much cleaner feed. Either way, whatever you got going on right now is fine. Just go ahead and choose it. And then come down here and make sure your inputs are set to left and right. So input channel 1 and input channel 2. Now, if you want internal audio, that's what I got going on here with Voicemeeter. And that lets you feed YouTube Music, Spotify, whatever you're listening to, straight into Resolume. And it makes practicing way easier when your audio is right there. Rob covers that whole setup in a previous tutorial in this beginner course. Go check that out if you want the in-depth breakdown. Now that we got that set up, let's turn on our music and check it out. All right, down here is where you want to pay attention to the FFT gain, and you can turn that up. And what that's going to do is amplify the music coming in. That way your parameters have more that's being fed to it. Just for the sake of the tutorial, I am going to turn up the FFT gain all the way to amplify the music that is coming in and leave the actual audio lower so you can hear me well. So what I would like to do is set up this threshold to audio reactivity. And what we're going to do is go to threshold, hit external FFT, and you can see it's jumping from the 0 point headed towards the 1. And what I would like to do is flip that. So let's hit this left arrow button. And now you can see that it is gravitating towards the 1 and it's jumping towards the 0 based on the music coming in. And let's crank that up a little bit. Now whenever the beat hits, the threshold is working more, and it's allowing the displays to show. So whenever we have the threshold down all the way, you're not getting any of the displays. So you can also mess with the fall here. And what that's going to do is, as you can see, it starts to drop like a rock whenever I turn the fall down. When I turn the fall up, it gives it a lot more grace, so it's not going to just drop like a rock back to where we had it coming from. And then, of course, if you want to amplify the music coming in or not, you can mess with the gain here as well. You also have the plus and the minus. And the difference with that is the plus is going to give you a continuous looping movement forward, and the minus does the opposite. It's going to continuously move backwards. Both of those are being driven by external FFT. And if you hit the drop down arrow here, you're going to see they're going to have a little bit more control over some of the external FFT. And again, you can adjust how much it's jumping and how much it's actually given you to adjust here with your master. And then if from that point, you can go in here and dial those in more. Now here you got your lows, mediums, and highs. So you can jump that around if you have a specific spot, or maybe that just gets you a good jump start on where you want to dial it in from there a little bit more. And that may mean dialing it in to isolate a kick drum or a snare or the bass hit. And another way to do that is if you want to, let's go back to how we had it. And you can dial it in up here too, so you can take your parameters and adjust that. Between all those, going for your preferred effect takes a little bit of fine tuning, but there is a lot of options there available for us. All right, so as we're coming to an end on this audio reactivity section, I wanted to add in 2 quick tips. And number 1 is I would highly recommend to MIDI-Map your FFT, the master FFT gain, to a knob on your MIDI controller. Shouts to Rob for giving me this advice, and in fact, he'll be going into MIDI mapping in the next tutorial. Now, second off, if you ever want to get back to the default on a parameter, all you got to do is right-click it. If we wanted to bring in internal audio that we drop inside of Resolume, rather than the external FFT option, we would just go to Composition FFT. Fire the audio, and you'll see it's picking it up just the same. All right, let's cover the last driver, and that's BPM. Your settings for it live right down here underneath the layers. And over here on the far end, we got the 4 count visual, and that's gonna help us read the beat and sync things up. Now, if you know the actual BPM, you can just go over here and type it in yourself. And next we got the plus and the minus. If you need to do a single bump on the BPM, you can do that up or down. Now the next two nudge the BPM if your playback drifts out of sync, and you can go change the percentage of how much it's doing that in the preferences. Next, you got the divide by 2 and the multiply by 2. This gives you a half time or a double time with a single click. If you don't know the exact BPM of the song, you can manually tap it in and sync it up so the visual will be cohesive with the music. Before we get into that, let's go up here to where the transport is on your clip. Go to where it says timeline and select BPM Sync. This is going to prepare your clip to link up with the BPM that we're going to sync up here with the tapping method. So what we'll do to set this is we'll do a 4 count and then we'll resync it. So let me give you guys an example here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Resync. So now you can see the visual is linked up with the BPM. And if you come up here, you can see it stretched our visual into the BPM that we set. And then if you do a divide by 2, it will go faster. If you multiply by 2, it will slow it down. We touched on effect stacks earlier in the course, but a quick reminder, it makes a big difference which effects you have on the clip and the hierarchy you stack them in. So here's mirror with BPM on the Y. And I wanted to show you guys how BPM can be applied to drive a parameter, as well as how powerful it is with multiple effects stacked up. And then also just restacking the hierarchy of them gets you wildly different results. Now, if you wanted to go deeper into effect stacks, I did a full tutorial on effect stack overview that really encompasses my workflow, how I look at building effect stacks, and I give a lot of tips on how you could build some of your own. Not to mention, Rob and I have given out a ton of different effect stacks that go into detail on which effects you stack in what order and what parameters we use for our own live performances. Certain effects respond to audio way better than others, and you'll start to notice the trends as you mess with them. And when you find something you like, you can save it. You can hit the P on the presets over here. So in your clip panel, you'll see each effect is going to have a preset option. And here's where you can choose the different presets that are attached with the plugin or effect. And then you can also manage and save them here. So if you like this example right here, if we like the Y on the BPM, we could save it. And then now whenever we go back, we are going to have a Y BPM preset. So that allows you to save anything you like and get right back to it. And, hopefully start to carve out your own style over time by saving things you like and making it easier to get back to different looks. Another way to get back to some cool effects that you like is right-click the clip, go to Copy Effects, go to an open clip spot, right-click, and then go to Paste Effects. This is going to create a video router for you and paste those effects in that you wanted. So a video router acts like an adjustment layer, and it affects everything underneath it. And we touched on this earlier in the beginner course, so I won't go too deep here. I like to keep all my video routers together on one layer, and that's my effects layer. And it's the same idea as the masking layer from the previous tutorial. And here's the beauty of it, is my effects live separate from my content. So this allows me to grab it and adjust it on the fly as I'm feeling it in a live performance. So maybe I want it in this group or outside of it, above or below a logo, working with my colors and mask, stuff like that. Changing all that up on the fly really allows you to test a lot of stuff quickly and find what's working. And sometimes I'll even run 2 different effect stack layers And again, change the hierarchy of that up. So yeah, moral of the story, don't be afraid to test stuff out, whether that's mixing up your hierarchy of layers or grabbing a mask and bringing that in and dropping it and testing out your different masks. We'll be going a lot deeper into how to optimize your setup in the building your show file tutorial at the end of this beginner course. So you may have noticed in the VJ community at large, the words effects and plugins and shaders are almost used synonymously. And although I've never run into an issue because of it, I did want to make this graphic to help with clarity and avoid any confusion. As far as installing them, whether that's our plugins or something you grabbed online, all you got to do is drag and drop it right into your composition, and it should pop up right in your effects panel. Now, let me show you one I just dropped, and it's got 20 different shaders in the plugin. So first off, I want to show you guys the power of this single plugin. By having 20 different shaders inside of it under a single dropdown, you can drive the shader parameter with a BPM or external FFT, etc. So I'll keep going and showcase some different looks. And this is just with another clip underneath it using a blend mode. This look right here is the wireframe. And notice you have some thresholds over here and different parameters you can go play around with and dial in. Here we got our tritone. You can see the original image over there in the preview monitor. Here we got inked. And it's always interesting to see how much these shaders can really change up your content. Here we got halftone. And as you can see, we're driving the scale and the amount with the external FFT here. Here's the stained glass on the neon bars. And here is Solar Eyes. Now we got the threshold that is driving the edge detection. Gives it a fun look. And here's ASCII doing the same thing. Then you do have the option to type in any custom text you want right there. And this one's Blueprint. Blueprint turned out really, really good with this one. And shout out to the VJ Academy community for suggesting a few different styles and shaders that I was able to add in here. And I'm going to be able to embed that in future plugins as well. So two more here. Here's Emboss, which gives it kind of like almost like a depth or like a roughness map, which is really cool. And then one more with Gilbert, we got Thermal, which Thermal is one of my favorite shaders out of all of them. So yeah, this plugin with all those 20 shaders drops in the VJ Academy as soon as this tutorial does. Enjoy. All right, so that wraps up effects. And if you can't tell, effects are really the bread and butter for VJs. How you drive those parameters with audio reactivity or BPM really makes a difference on how the visuals move with the music. And at the end of the day, that is our job, is to make the music cohesive with the visuals. So if you want to scoop up a bunch of assets, a reminder that we do monthly plugin drops and other goodies in the VJ Academy. But besides that, if you wanted to purchase some, you can go to Juice Bar, or our friend Shady Head Stash has a ton on his website as well. So I'll drop the links in the description below. And keep in mind that we are building towards the end of this beginner course. We're doing a show file tutorial. That's going to take in all those building blocks that we've been adding in, from masking to groups to effects now. So thanks for sticking with us, and we'll talk soon.